My name is Dr. Paul Darvasi. I currently teach games and learning and social media and education at OISE, which is the Faculty of Teaching at the University of Toronto. I have 20 years experience teaching at the high school level, primarily in the areas of English literature and media studies. And I also run multimedia and digital games studio called Goldbug Interactive. We create games for cultural institutions and for development and humanitarian institutions like the United Nations, NGOs, museums, universities. Largely digital games. We also create animation and other media, which is secondary, and we're very interested in creating games that change attitudes and behaviors and help teach people about very important issues that are affecting our planet today. Play is fundamentally nature's way of teaching us how to do things, and games are only a form of designed play, and they almost allow us to take that impulse of play that we find in young children and early childhood development and extend it into later parts of our lives, because it is very difficult to play any game and not learn something. The second part of why games are particularly important now is that we are transitioning from culture of spectatorship to a culture of interactivity and participation. Our culture of spectatorship comes from watching movies, watching television shows, reading, and it's really largely a product of the Industrial Revolution. Now that we're moving into a digital world that allows us to participate in social media, to produce YouTube videos, and they're not as interested in spectatorial models. And the traditional model of teaching is spectatorial. You have the teacher who stands in front of the class and transmits information, and every student is passively consuming information. So if you look at many of the most current thoughts around what good pedagogy or effective pedagogy looks like, we want to make the learning individuated to the students. We want to give students voice. We want students to learn at their own pace. We want students to be more engaged in the learning process. We want teachers to be more facilitators than transmitters of information. All of these models of pedagogy are embodied in game dynamics. One is using digital games in classrooms, games like, Minecraft or history games or narrative games, and having students analyze them, think about them, or support their learning, much in the way that we have used books in the past or other learning artifacts. The second, and I think the more important elements of my experiments in the classroom, involve not just using a game in a class, but turning the whole class into a game. So I've designed games that last for 35 days, and for the entire time, students are completing missions. They're all doing different things. There's a narrative. They're playing through a story. So it's not just sitting there and learning and taking notes, but you're inside of an immersive world where there are videos and websites and emails, and you're trying to sort of discover what's going on, and you're producing artifacts and you're interacting. It's amazing that even in my very limited experimentation in that area, it completely transformed the way that education feels. My students were very engaged and they were very productive. So the most important thing is to keep an open mind and to experiment. The more teachers and educators can connect to the reality of what's going on outside, the better it is. One of the great ways to do it, the simplest advice that I have for educators, is find out what your students are doing and respect what your students are doing outside of school. A lot of it is predicting the future. The way our kids play and the way our kids interact online is a window into the next 20 years of life on this planet. Whether you like it or not, right, it's the reality. And by learning what our children are doing and trying to think, how can I incorporate what our children are already doing in the informal learning spaces outside of school, and using that in our practice, the better you're going to connect to the world outside of the school, and the more you're going to inject relevant and timely learning into your practice. I hope that all this wonderful information that we're sharing and ideas and concepts will be put into practice. And the change happens through the doing. You have to do the change.